Welcome to the SAMTON podcast, featuring Samantha Martin and Anton Kuznetsov.
All right, so we're going to be talking about healthy and toxic relationships. We're just going to jump right into the healthy portion. We're going to be talking about communication, boundaries, support, effort, trust and honesty, and more.
Yep.
All right, Anton, starting off with communication.
I think to make a healthy relationship necessarily healthy, you have to constantly be communicating about like what's going on or like what, is making you uncomfortable or like what you don't like or what you do like, But it has to be established at the very beginning of the relationship.
Absolutely.
Or else you can go into this relationship, and once you start communicating further into the relationship, they'll be like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. It's like you don't necessarily get that that trust right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agreed. You should really start on communication early out in the relationship.
Yep.
Something from personal experience is whenever we find we have an issue, we always communicate it out. We always talk it out. We never go to sleep angry because it'll cause more problems in the future.
Yep.
And yeah, that's pretty much it for communication. Do you have anything to say on boundaries?
Well, boundaries are essential, and it kind of ties into communication as well. Mm-hmm. Because to set healthy boundaries, you have to communicate, obviously. And, you can't be afraid to say what makes you uncomfortable, what you don't like, because the other person isn't going to automatically know. They can't read a face. You have to tell them what you don't like or what you do like. It's like...
Yep.
If you establish these boundaries and you follow them and you make sure that these boundaries are strict and enforced, there should be no problems considering that you're constantly, talking about your feelings and your boundaries, It's like you'll get a lot more trust from that by establishing that early on along with communication.
Agreed. And I think a lot of people don't know what boundaries
Absolutely
consist of. Some advice I'd say, if it's a romantic relationship, definitely talk about your personal boundaries as in physical and emotional. Yep. I know for physical, some people don't like certain touching, stuff like that.
Yeah.
For emotional, people are like, what do you mean emotional boundaries? I'd say I know a lot of people are more sensitive than others and certain jokes are offensive. Just talk about your feelings and boundaries with them early on in the talking stages, just to reassure them.
Yeah. And I mean, the issue isn't necessarily if they say something that triggers you. Mm-hmm. The issue is if they say that, you're like, hey, that's not cool. You're like, you set that boundary that you don't want them making that joke, and then they continue making it. For example, I mean, it doesn't have to be a joke, but in that example, they do something, you say, hey, that's not cool. So you set that boundary, and then they continue doing it. That's the issue.
Support.
Well, this one's really simple. Just honestly be there. This is common sense. Just be there for your partner. I mean, even in friendships and stuff, it's always good to have a support network because high school, let's be honest, high school is hard. High school sucks.
Yep.
And, you really can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So it's good to have friends. It helps for sure that are supportive and, understand your pain.
At the same time, for I'd say romantic and friend relationships, unpopular opinion, I like when people are upfront. If I'm doing something wrong, I don't want people saying, oh, no, it's okay, you'll be fine. If I'm doing something wrong, tell me I'm doing something wrong.
Exactly. Because that sets that, that's the communication part of it, Be upfront with your person, constantly go over what makes you uncomfortable and what makes you comfortable. Yeah, it's tedious, but in the end, that's what you have to build it brick by brick to have a good foundation for your relationship. Because the second you figure out how to talk out your problems, from there it's just fixing issues,
Yep. So for example, if this can even tie into it. If someone was like, oh, I'm gonna go sneak out of my house, you're not gonna be like, oh, I support you on that. No, say that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I really want to see this boy. I'm going to go over this house tonight. I'll come home around 2 a.m, knowing that's not a smart idea. I don't want you to support me on that. I want you to tell me, don't do that, even if I'm going to get angry with you, because it'll be better in the long run.
Yep, absolutely. Effort really goes a long way. And I mean, the thing with effort is can't really fake it.
No.
You either put in the effort or you don't.
You can absolutely tell when someone doesn't put effort, or like if
It's
they're
very easy to tell. You can see right through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in like not even in a friend relationship, but like in a romantic relationship. Like, you start noticing you're talking to them more than they're talking to you. You text them more than they text you. You try and see them. You make those plans. They don't make those plans. They don't ask you out. You ask them out. And that's when it's like it starts going through your head. It's like, what am I really to this person? If I stop talking to this person, will they really respond back? And sometimes they don't. But those people are not your friends.
Yeah.
Those people are not people that I would consider a friend.
And that really ties into what we talked about last time with toxic relationships, is when someone wants that person to like them so much that the other person starts taking advantage of them.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're like, oh, they want me. Let me do this because I know they'll do it. Like, I know they're not going to leave because they like me so much. So definitely effort is a very important part of healthy relationships.
Absolutely. And that can be traumatizing. It's like you do this, like, why would you do that to someone? Like, take advantage of them, especially if they're, like, vulnerable and they're, like, showing that vulnerability to you. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Next one is trust and honesty. Going, like, along with trust and honesty just in general, integrity is a really big one in there. If you know you're doing something wrong, you're like, oh, they won't find out. Why would you do that? Like, just tell them straight up, like, hey, I did this. Be honest with them. Have some integrity and tell them what's going on.
Yeah, because, I mean, that builds trust as well. It's like this goes along with everything, like communication, boundaries, all of that also ties into trust, because it's like you trust that person to follow through with those boundaries or, communicate with you properly.
Yeah, trust. Even if someone does something, from personal experience, I had some stuff going in the past, and then I went into another romantic relationship, and I lied about something because I was embarrassed, and I didn't want them to find out, and I said, hey, if you hear this, it's just a rumor. Like, it didn't happen. And they're like, oh, okay. And then about 2 weeks later, someone decided to say something to him and was like, hey, this happened. And he was like, oh, no, that's just a rumor. And then one of his friends decided to dig deeper and found a name and found a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to, like, be honest with him.
Yeah.
It was definitely a really big fight, and it took a lot of control for him to not be super, super upset. It took about a couple weeks for him to get over it, but now we're really healthy, and I'm glad I didn't have to keep that, because even he said if I kept that for longer, then we definitely would have not been in a relationship right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's stuff like that. It's just there's no point in hiding stuff from your partner or, like, lying to them, especially about, like your, like, backstory or, like, who you are or things that you like. I don't get why you would, like lie to someone just to get them to, like you more. Like, you should be honest with what you like and, like, what happened to you in the past, because it's like, why would you be with a person where you have to lie to them constantly and put up an image?
If they can't like you for who you are or deal with the things that you've been through, then they're not the person.
Yeah, they're not the person. Exactly.
Yep. Now we're going to go into how to avoid getting into a toxic relationship.
Yep.
One of my advice is notice red flags early on. If the person, let's say you get in a fight and they're always like, oh, you did this, you did that, it's your fault, I didn't do anything, and they're always blaming everything on you, and you notice everything's always your fault. That is manipulation, my friend, and gaslighting. Yeah,
gaslighting is, honestly, sometimes it's hard to pick up on. There's some people that are very good at it, and people don't even, there's a thing where people don't realize that they're gaslighting.
Yeah.
I think it comes from lying to themselves as well as, like, it's like, oh, well, I didn't have any part in this, she or they, they did this, like, they contributed at least some to the, like, problem, so that means it's their fault, it's not my fault, and they constantly deflect. It's just like, you can't see the red flags if you're always wearing rose-colored glasses.
I like that.
Honestly. It's like, yes, you're in love and you're romantic or whatever, but, like, you have to take a minute and see if, like, what they're really doing is good for you,
Yeah.
It's like I feel like once someone, because everyone's been in a bad relationship before, and it happens at some point.
Some worse than others.
Yeah, some worse than others. But like at some point, someone has been manipulated, or someone has manipulated you or gaslighted you, maybe without you knowing it. But like it's happened, and I feel like the second you start picking up on like stuff like gaslighting and manipulation, for example, you like it builds you as a person, and it helps you like continue on with more healthier relationships in the future.
And honestly, even parents do that. Like some kids don't notice.
Parents are the number one gaslighters and manipulators.
And some people are like, oh, but they're older and they're more mature and they know what they're talking about, so they believe. No,
they don't. No, they don't. Some just because they're an adult does not make them any better. Does not make their points valid. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Bottom line. You know, you have to have your own self-respect, and you have to listen to yourself sometimes, because it's like. Yes, I mean, you of course, take into account what they're saying. I'm not saying that every parent is bad. There's plenty of good parents, but it is a very common thing nowadays where parents will gaslight or manipulate their kids into doing, you know, what they want.
Yeah, or just be like, I know personal experience here. My parents, when they get angry, they like to gaslight, and eventually they'll apologize for it later. But specifically, my dad. He will be like, oh, it's your mother's fault that you've been raised like this and you're such a horrible child.
Yeah, that is not okay. That is not okay at all.
And eventually he'll take into account, like, I'm sorry, that was not right. I shouldn't have said that. But it definitely leaves a mark on you.
Yeah.
Just try to talk about with your parents. And if they don't listen, then that's another issue to be dealt with.
I got in an argument with my mom fairly recently. And I was I was arguing with her and I was making very valid points. And at some point she said, you'll understand when you're older. And that's, you can't say dismissive stuff like that. Like in any relationship, like, oh, you'll understand if you do this, or you'll understand later. No, I understand now. You're just trying to like dismiss what I'm saying because you know I have a point.
Exactly. And then they bring up the point, oh, your brain's not fully developed yet.
Yeah, whatever. Or they say something, but like it's... You know, it's not okay. It needs to stop. And hopefully with like future generations, it's more, because I mean, mental health has only recently been like blown up and like made like super important.
Yeah.
Like before 2010, I feel like no one really talked about mental health. So it's like stuff like gaslighting and manipulation really went under the radar.
Yes. Another thing is, don't be afraid to cut it off. I know a lot of people have abandonment issues and they're like, but I can't lose this person and they do this and they do that. But it'll honestly be healthier for you to just drop the situation in general if it gets to that point.
Absolutely.
Because you'll always feel these negative things, and all that negative energy will go away once it's cut off. Yes, at first you might feel a little like guilty, or you might feel a little bit down, but in the long run, it'll absolutely be better.
Yeah, you can't invalidate yourself. If it's something that's genuinely making you uncomfortable and they're not willing to change and they're not willing to hear you out and like support you and validate you in your issues, you should drop it. I mean, it's just like bottom line, don't be in a relationship where you're constantly struggling and you're constantly in pain and the other partner is not willing to do anything about it.
I'm going to bring up more personal experience.
Okay.
So in a romantic relationship I was in, we only dated for about two months, but I was like head over heels for this person. And I thought he was the most amazing person in the world, when later on I figured out he was manipulating, he was gaslighting, all this stuff. And I was too afraid to cut it off. He cut it off with me, and he broke up with me. But then he realized, oh, wow, she still wants to be with me after all of this. I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And there was emotional, physical, all of this stuff when I was unable to cut it off for about 6 months.
I had an experience just like that. I mean, I was talking to this girl last year, and we broke up. She didn't really give me a reason why it happened. She just, it happened, you know. She said she didn't know why. She just didn't want to be with me anymore.
Yep.
I was very invested in that relationship. I put everything I had. And to hear that, like, to hear those words where, like, I can't give you a reason why, at least a reason.
We can go into a commercial break.
Okay, I'm back. All right.
All right.
Anyways, continuing what I was saying, I put so much into that relationship, and to hear that she couldn't give me a valid reason why she wanted to leave. And it's just like that broke me. There was no communication. And afterwards, I still wanted her. I still tried reaching out to her, and she started to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I think it was about a month or two of just her being like, yeah, I want to be with you. And then we'd hang out and then be all boyfriend and girlfriend. And then the next week she'd be like, I hate you. You're the worst person. It would be like that for 2 months. And at some point it drained me so much. I literally started to go crazy. It was like I couldn't take it anymore. Everything was falling apart. I kept thinking that maybe I can get through to this person and change them. But then I realized at some point I have to leave.
Yeah.
It's not happening. It's not working.
And it's never easy.
It isn't.
You always be like, oh, I'm struggling with this and it's so hard. We get it.
Yeah.
But you just got to do it.
Sometimes you have to bite the bullet, unfortunately. I feel bad for people who are in that position because it sucks. It's one of the worst things you can go through. Having to leave someone that you cared about, and now they're manipulating you, and you have to leave them because it's a toxic environment. Is that's just tragic.
But if you don't, it'll just get worse.
Absolutely. It'll only get worse. It'll only be that can cause trauma. You develop trust issues. You develop abandonment issues.
Yep.
If you didn't have them already, I mean, while you're staying with them, I guess that is abandonment issues.
Yep. All right, I think that's it, unless you have anything to add on.
No, I think that's everything.
All right.